Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 6th meeting of the Millis School Committee. I will start by saying this meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on YouTube. My name is Carrie Roach. I'm the current chair. I'll start with roll call. Robin Briggs. Here. Stephen Catalano.
Here.
Mark Conroy.
Here.
Denise Gibbons.
Here.
We don't have any teacher or student reps, and superintendent. Here. Great. So we'll first get started. We're a little late this evening. Sorry about that. The school committee just finished a walkthrough of all of the buildings of the middle high school and the Clyde Brown, and happy to report that everything looks great. Looks like we're ready. The facilities are ready to go. And thank you, Nancy and the admin team, for taking us around. We appreciated it. Jody, do we have anyone for open session? Okay, then we'll go into action items. We have some minutes to approve.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
I would make a motion to approve the September 29th school committee meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. One other thing that I forgot to announce, we do have an email address. So if there's any questions during the meeting, you can email us. The email address is sc1006@millisschools.org. So it's sc and then the date 1006@millisschools.org. All right, we'll go right into superintendent's report. Nancy, did you want to start with budget or hybrid?
I think basically because the principals of the state, I'd like to start with
Let's do it.
hybrid, and I'd like them to come on up and join me. We'll take turns at the mic. Basically, I'll do a little bit of an overview, which basically, as you all know, in July and August, we developed 3 models: a fully in-person model, a fully remote model, and a hybrid model.
Nancy, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for one quick second. Do you want to sit just in case people can't hear you with the microphone? Okay, great.
Whoops.
Oh,
Okay.
even better. Thanks.
I'll start over,
Okay.
and because I have plexiglass, if you're comfortable, I'll take off my mask so that people can hear. And basically, in July and August, we developed with advisory committees, with stakeholders from every group, a fully in-person model, a fully remote model, and a hybrid model. So what is being discussed right now is phasing from the fully remote model that we've been in for this past month, after the 2 weeks of teacher training, to a hybrid model. So the hybrid model has not changed from what we proposed and submitted to the Department of Education, but we've gone very deeply with teachers into what that will look like, and provided the training and the support and the professional development and the time for them to start developing this hybrid model. So we had the phase 1 was teachers and staff returned for those 2 weeks of professional development. Then we've been doing remote learning with 100% of our students. And the feedback is generally that it's going quite well, that it's a very different experience for our students than it was in the spring. And it's much more structured, and that was part of what we worked a lot on, and teachers have worked very hard on. Every single teacher also participated in a summer course called Modern Classroom Essentials. That basically is the foundational philosophy for what we're doing. And we're hoping at some point soon to move into hybrid instruction, which is 2 days a week of in-school, in-person cohort with 3 days remote. Wednesdays will be remote for everybody. So one cohort is in Monday, Tuesday. The other cohort is in Thursday, Friday. and families stay together. We've made some adjustments. I think all of the cohorts are pretty well set right now. So people might ask why, why move into a hybrid model? And we believe that a hybrid model is the best of both worlds, that it allows us to do what we've been working on in the Millis Public Schools for quite a while, which is blended learning and using our technology to enhance learning, plus the face-to-face that really supports a lot of education. Blended learning in general, no, I don't want to back up. Blended learning is an approach to learning that combines face-to-face experiences with online experiences, and ideally, each of these complements the other by tapping into the particular strengths. And we've been doing this in the Millis Public Schools with learning pathways and choice boards built into our learning management system, which is either Google Classroom or It's Learning. So why does in-person time benefit students? The research there is pretty strong that while fully online learning can be effective, that it's not as effective as in-person or blended, a combination. So there is a meta-analysis that's come out recently. A lot of the research does focus on higher education that's been using this model for years, but it's definitely, we know that, for example, the most at-risk students and lower performing students are the ones that lose ground when you're just in remote learning. It heightens the socioeconomic disparities between groups of kids for, especially food insecurity. We know we've tried very hard, but only a portion of our families that qualified for free and reduced lunch are accessing the meals. The academic disparities grow and the mental health disparities. We also know that young children struggle with remote learning more than older students. High school students, it's not a big deal. They've been doing this for quite a while. All students, according to the research, it's shown that they have lower GPAs, not only for the current class, but for future classes if it's just remote learning. And we have found this to be true for Millis students as well. For example, when students at the high school level take advanced placement courses through remote learning, sometimes it's something that we don't offer here in the building, and it's more of a challenge for students. And as I mentioned, the social emotional wellness and the mental health are a great concern that we believe it's good for kids to have those in-person social experiences with their classmates as well as with their teachers. Just very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to the principals to do a little brief description of what each building is doing. In other districts surrounding us, Walpole currently has kindergarten in fully 4 days per week and is hybrid grades 1 through 12. Dover-Sherborne is hybrid pre-K through 12, but on October 19th, they're proposing to bring their pre-K to 3 students fully in person. In Norfolk, they're hybrid K to 12 or pre-K to 12. Holliston, they're fully in person from pre-K up through grade 3, and then 4 to 12 is hybrid. In Medway, they're fully in person for 4 days a week from pre-K to grade 2, and then hybrid grades 3 and up. In Medfield, they're hybrid throughout the grades, and in Franklin, they started remote, and then on October 1st started transitioning with each week a new couple of grade spans, 2 to 3 grade spans being added in, so it's a staggered transition to hybrid learning. Why don't I pause here because what the school committee has just what we did prior to this was little video samples of what hybrid and some students being remote will look like. And what was shown and what was described by the principals is basically that sometimes choices will be made by teachers for what is most effective for asynchronous learning and synchronous. And there will be times that students are all doing the same thing, including the kids who are remote at home and the kids who are long-term fully remote all the time with the in-person class. So we'll start at Clyde Brown, and just very briefly, I think a brief synopsis of what it will look like for students in the hybrid cohorts as well as the fully remote students. Thank you.
Hi, is it okay if I take my mask off for just a moment, or do you want it to stay on? Stay on?
Our policy.
So actually,
Can
the
you hear me?
policy is to keep
Can
it
you hear
on.
me?
We were
Okay.
just thinking of that as we were, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
As long as
sorry,
you can
Tana.
hear me, that's fine.
Sorry.
Thank you for joining us over at Clyde Brown tonight to walk through the building. We're anticipating that the hybrid model will have the very similar structure that we have now in the remote, where students would be zooming into the classroom for morning meeting, live instruction. Students would be sent off for some independent work for those who are still remote. And then coming back together at the end of the day. There would be time, the in-person students would have an opportunity to spend a little bit more intensive time with the classroom teacher, with the Zoom meeting open, so that if our remote students had questions, they could come into the waiting room. The teacher could then see that they had a question and answer those questions. The classroom teacher would remain the same for our fully remote students, and they would join on the cohort days, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, and then everyone would be remote on Wednesday. So, thank you.
Tina, can I just ask you to just explain a little bit more, because when you say the full remote kids are going to be in a cohort, so can we just expand a little bit on that so parents understand?
Sure. So every child at Clyde F. Brown has been assigned to a cohort. So they've already received that information. If they choose to be fully remote, they're still going to be attached to a cohort, so that if in the future they change their mind and want to go from remote to hybrid, they're already attached to a cohort and assigned to a Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday grouping, so that whether it's fully remote for a time and then moving into hybrid, they're already attached to a cohort.
Got it.
So
Thank
that
you.
there's no reshuffling of the cohorts at any point.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tana.
Good evening, everybody. I'm smiling under here. Thank you for joining us again at Clyde Brown today. So I'm not going to reiterate everything Tana just said, because the middle school is following a similar philosophy around hybrid learning. Our structure will remain the same. Our schedule will remain the same. The schedule that students were given at the beginning of the year won't change. They will continue to log into a synchronous live session with the teacher at the beginning of every class period. And then what happens after that may vary depending on the day, the lesson objective, the activity, the particular content that the teacher's covering. But the students who are long-term remote, the students who are remote for their 3 days, will participate in a variety of ways, just like they do now. We've been doing a lot of brainstorming as a staff as to what it could look like. And someone commented, this is a lot like what we're doing now. And I think because we personalize now and we use a variety of strategies and applications and different ways to collaborate and engage with kids, that's going to continue. Students who are in the building, we are looking at as building time as gold. So teachers really want to make the most of that time that they have with students in front of them. There might be times in a science classroom, perhaps, when they're doing a hands-on activity that students at home might not be able to engage with the same way, so they might have something, a related activity to do at home. Teachers are talking about independent Genius Hour project-based learning happening at home. There might be some flipped classroom models whereby students would watch a video and then do some independent work at home. There might be some independent learning paths set up by teachers for students, which allow for personalization in terms of doing some reinforcement work, some enrichment work, depending on the particular student. So we envision a lot of different things happening, but our overall goal is to keep students who are learning remotely and students who are learning in the classroom pretty much on the same pathway and engaging together as much as possible. Any questions?
No? Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
Oh, Mr. Conley.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarity on what we're, and I was just trying to scan through. Are we going through, like, what are we talking to tonight versus what would be talked about next week? I'm just talking, like, are we later talking about, like, what lunch would look like, or is that all just going to be part of a bigger presentation next?
So I think we talked about what lunch would look like so it's tough, right? Because we just did our walkthrough, which we filmed and we're going to make available. So
Okay.
so for people that are watching at home, we did film our walkthrough and we'll make that available so you can see that we did go to the cafeteria. We talked about what lunch would look like, how it's going to work. We talked about, how kids file into the buildings, how we saw the markers on the ground, and we talked about bathroom protocols and all that stuff. So, we'll post those videos so that the parents can see that this has all been thought through, and after we go through, when we get to the chairman's report, we'll bring up the spreadsheet again,
Okay.
although we're not on Zoom, so I'll have to just talk through it, but we can then again go through and say that, yep, the bathroom protocols are complete, we've seen it, we've signed off on it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just going to ask questions. Obviously, we just did the walkthrough, so I know
Yep.
the answers, but I was just.
Yeah, it is tough because we know
Right,
the
I
answers,
just-
but for
Right.
parents out there, we are gonna make that available so you can also see what we just saw and be comfortable that what we're saying is true and that these procedures have been thought through and executed well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
Madam Chair, just as we're switching, so we just got an email, the SC 1006 at Millis Schools. Somebody said it's not going through. Is it SC?
Yeah. S is in Sam, C is in Charlie.
1006 at millisschools.org.
Yep, he's checking.
SC 1006, it's
Mark, you want to just
I'll
send a
just
test
send
email?
Yeah.
Is it at sc.org, Dave? Or is it at millisschools.org?
Millisschools.org.
Okay, I'll send one just as a test. Okay, go ahead.
So we'll
Sorry.
test it. Hi.
Good evening. Good evening. So at the high school level, a lot of it is going to be similar to what you heard from Tana and Maureen. We'll basically be on the same schedule. When we go hybrid classes in the morning, will be 75 minutes. The afternoon class will be 100 minutes. There will be slight changes because we have to allow for passing time and 2 lunches, but the in-class time will not change, and the starting and ending time classes will be very similar. We're looking at, as mentioned before, starting the class, everyone being in the beginning of the class for attendance, so the remote kids and the kids who are in person. We'll all Zoom in together for the start of the class for attendance, and from there it could go in any number of ways, as Tana and Maureen mentioned. We think that, Maureen mentioned the time with the kids in front of you is a very important time for teachers. And so one of the consequences of that is going to be, right now we have everyone doing remote, everyone's on the same page, and the curriculum is moving at a very consistent level. When we transfer and transition to hybrid, there are going to be some challenges with that. And, you know, we're not going to be able to cover curriculum in the same way. So we may not be able to cover as much curriculum, but we believe having in-person learners will help us with the depth of the curriculum, so we'll be gaining depth over breadth. We also believe that you know, the social emotional aspects are certainly worth the transition. And so we think it's a fair trade to lose some of that curriculum coverage to gain the social emotional benefits for kids to be in contact with their teacher and to see their classmates live and in person. We feel like that's a fair trade-off from going from remote, 100% remote to hybrid. The kids who are 100% remote will be assigned to a cohort in their classes. So sometimes those kids, the 100% remote kids, might stay in a Zoom meeting in a class longer than the at-home cohort, you know, will, just so they get that contact with the teacher. And I don't know if there's any questions for the high school.
No, and I will also just let the parents know that, you know, as part of our walkthrough, we were able to see some examples of what hybrid would look like. So we actually got it to see it sort of live, and you know, the principals and Nancy is working on making that available to the parents too, or a portion of it, so you can also see what we saw, which was, you know, a really good demonstration of teachers teaching both kids in person and in hybrid, and how it works, and knowing that every teacher may do it a little different and every day may look a little different depending on, you know, what's being taught or the age level. But we did see a very good demonstration of that with each school. So we're going to work to get that out to the parents pretty quickly, so everyone at home can also see that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
So I think it's important to know, too, that teachers are constantly reflecting and improving on their practice and trying new things. And as it evolves, it will also get better, and they collaborate to share those best practices as well. But the hybrid model does allow for greater personalization and more choices and student agency. Teachers will be, as Bob mentioned, maybe not able to go as quickly through the curriculum, but it is a greater depth around especially the power standards that we've identified as the most important, that have endurance and leverage and provide that readiness for the next grade of learning. So there will be constant evolving, improving strategies. And one of the important things about that will be parent and student feedback. And I'll get to that at the end. We have put out this week the survey for parents to choose whether they want a fully remote long-term experience or if they want the hybrid. And the important thing is that for parents to get that, they need to be signed up for the listservs. The listservs are under, on the right-hand side on our website. It says listservs. You can subscribe to them there. If you're having any trouble at all, just call the office of the school. So far, we have about 75% of our respondents who have responded, that 88, almost 89% of our families are choosing a hybrid experience for their students, with about 11% choosing to stay fully remote. So we need to get the next 25%. It's very important, and I'll be sending out another listserv and another call home. And if families have any trouble, they can just call the school.
Nancy, is there a deadline that you want them to respond by?
Yeah, well, this week, ideally. And if we don't hear from a family by the end of the week, we will then be calling the family to ask them what their choice is.
Nancy, before we move on, we still, and this is actually a good place to do it, we're in-person, hybrid, and fully remote up there. Can we just clarify, because I know there's still a lot of questions out there about, just to reiterate again, if you choose fully remote, you are absolutely 100% being taught by the student's teacher and not a non-Millis teacher. I know.
Correct.
We say we're not going to answer questions during this, but I just happened to open it up to see if it was working, and that's in there. So can we
Yes.
just
Our Millis
clarify
teachers,
that one more time?
yes, our Millis teachers are incorporating the fully remote students into their planning, and they will be meeting with them. They will be teaching them. Yes, it's all Millis teachers and Millis staff members.
And they're still part of their cohort. They're still part of their classroom.
Right, and as our videos show that we're working on, they may be collaborating with kids in one cohort, they may be collaborating with other remote students, so there's still plenty of interaction with their classmates. And that's a really important part of the social emotional interactions right now, that we really want to help students form good relationships and strong bonds, and that's important for all the kids.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
So just since we're talking about the survey and the commitment, can you explain, I think it went out and then the ask was for a commitment of the full term or semester or whatever. Is there any way, or have you guys, or could you explain why it wouldn't work if we offered families an option, maybe do the first 2 weeks and then lock in for a longer period, one way or the other? Like if you, send your child hybrid for a week or 2 weeks, and if they think the remote option might be better, then they can switch, and vice versa. They
Right.
stay remote, and then lock in for a longer period. I know we don't necessarily want people swapping every other week, but just given it's the initial time, would it be very difficult to kind of
Right.
allow for a brief kind of trial
Grace
period?
period?
Yeah.
I think we, even though we're asking people to make the commitment for a trimester or a semester, that we certainly understand, and one of the hallmarks of the Millis Public Schools is we work closely with our families. So it might take a couple weeks, but if it's whichever model a family chooses isn't working, they need to just let us know, and we'll work with them to see what we can do as quickly as we can to integrate them into the other model. So it is, it is a commitment, and yes, we could have a grace period of a couple weeks or something for people to try it out. But I think the important thing too is that it will be evolving and improving. So the first couple weeks of anything is never as smooth. So I think they need to try it for a few weeks, but again, we are committed to personalizing and working with families to make sure that the student is learning as best possible. So we will work with families.
So, Madam Chair, I know we want to get the remaining survey results back, but based on the conversation we had at Clyde Brown about the videos and the additional information, I think it's incumbent, if we're looking for people to return by Friday, we need to get that information out sooner than later. Otherwise, we have to extend it out. I think we're still encountering the same thing, is that they don't have all the information that they need we've received a couple emails this week, so the quicker we can get the clarifying information and the videos out, I think the better it would be and the easier it would be for parents to make a decision.
Right. I did send a document describing, a summary document describing the differences between hybrid and remote with the survey on Monday. But we will try to see what we can do in terms of a video, because sometimes reading words, it's hard to imagine what it really looks like, and then the video is much, much better. But again, if a family has any questions, they can call us. If they're on the fence, they can get more information. I know the principals have been incredibly responsive to any questions that families have. So the rest of the information has not changed much. This is basically what we presented when we presented the hybrid portion of our model. We presented the model that we submitted to the Department of Education. We've looked and spoken at great length about the health and wellness, the health, safety, the isolation protocols, the contact tracing, the training for staff around everything, the teaching and learning, that we've been providing equitable access and working with families that might have poor connectivity. We've provided devices to all families. We've done a tremendous amount of professional development with staff. There's special education, as you know. Some of the most at-risk or neediest kids are in getting services now, and that's going very well. There are team meetings and IEP meetings that will be happening mostly remotely, but parents, again, can just give us a call. The facilities, we've done a tremendous amount of work, and they are in great shape, I think, as the committee saw tonight. We have procedures developed for all aspects of entry, dismissal, bathroom, mask breaks, recess, and the principals and Mr. Engler and facilities have done a great job. The committee also saw the buses and how those are set up, and the bus routes pretty much are established, although with tweaking of cohorts, those, we had to balance some cohorts or shift kids because the rest of their family was in a different cohort. And families, I believe, have been notified. We do have a wait list. If somebody would like to register for the bus, we are starting a wait list for each of the routes. And the social emotional wellness group has been doing a great job providing professional development for staff, as well as working directly with students. Operations I spoke about, and extended day is still under discussion as to when we can start our extended day program back up. Athletics, athletics are happening, and basically there are weekend sporting events, and we now have the porta potties on site. There are no locker rooms. The training room, weight room, everything is closed down, so there are strict procedures in place so that to ensure student safety. So these are some of the things we've been doing. We've talked at the last meeting about our HVAC study, the air quality, and the ventilation study, which was actually very good news. We've addressed in all of those issues, that repairs that were needed at the middle high school, as well as purchased air purifiers for all those spaces. There might be one or two remaining exhaust fans that need to be installed. So there's been a lot of information sent out by principals and by the district. It's very important, I think, that the communication between families and, people ask, okay, what can I do? First of all, ask lots of questions of your child's teacher. Share with us what's working and what's a challenge. If you, as a parent or a family, have an idea, offer those suggestions. When we do send out surveys, we appreciate your honest feedback. And if you have not been successful, you are not satisfied by talking with your child's teacher, then by all means do give the building principal a call or the assistant principal. And I think it's important, we personalize learning in the Millis Public Schools, and we, as one of those hallmarks, is that not all students learn in the same way, and teachers are doing their best to develop different ways to meet their needs, but these are extraordinarily challenging times, and so teachers are doing their best, and they'll get better and better at it as the year goes on. But I think all in all, the feedback has been good, and teachers are doing a tremendous job. So one of the things I wanted, Jen Starr, the technology department has been remarkable in what they've done to deploy all the devices so that a school device is in every child's home. They've done a tremendous amount of training with staff, and they've put together a resource that I wanted Jen Starr to show you that is a resource for families as well. So I'll turn it over to Jen just briefly.
Madam Chair, before we turn it over to Jen, can I ask the superintendent a question?
Of course, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Nancy, so there's been a lot of information that's come out over the course of the last few days for parents, and still some to come as far as making the choice between hybrid and remote. Some families may have already filled out their surveys. So do families, as they get to review all of this new information, do families have the opportunity to adjust their decision prior to a certain date?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I think the way the survey is set up, Joan Lynn and Jen Starr, both their offices worked on it. If a family changes their mind, they just go back into the survey link and fill it out again. And because it's by email, it changes the response. And then if there's any question, they can always call the office, or if we have a duplicate response, they are time-stamped, so we'll know which one is more recent. But we can always just give a follow-up call to the family to find out if there's any confusion.
That'd be great. So maybe if we could, as we're sending out some additional information to families, if we could include that as well to let people know that if you've already selected your choice, but you change it after learning some of this new information, here's what to do.
Okay.
Just that they know how to update it if they'd like to.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Do what?
Just making sure. So you have a different connection to your laptop.
Oh.
Do you have something, Dave? Thank you.
Do you want to use mine?
I already
Log in.
pulled up.
Just toss it.
Oh, right there. And of course, it's on the other side.
Thank you.
So as the superintendent mentioned, we've tried to create, let's see if they're coming up here. There we are. We've created a couple of resources for the community and for the teachers to support all of the digital and remote learning. The first site I wanted to show you is There's a link to it on all of the school websites. It's our Millis Update site. Excuse me, breathing through a mask. What you'll find on this site is our most recent information about updates around school opening and what's happening in the schools. I just wanted to point out that under the top tab here where it says schools and departments, if you go down to schools, you'll find all of the school newsletters. If you go down to the all of these are populated with great information. If you go to the technology section, you'll find any technology updates and also a link right here to what we have is our Millis Digital and Remote Learning site. This site was originally designed to help teachers and staff know what we have available and what supports digital and remote learning. It's pretty much turned into the site where we have all of our update information and all of the different sign-up forms. As you can see, these are for teachers. But what we've started making, what Nancy was alluding to, is a family learning center. And Pat Grancelli and Darius Corcoran have done a lot as far as, creating videos and things. Pat has put together some videos about your Clyde Brown iPad and using that. We also have some Google Suite tools here that the families can go to. So we want people to know that that Millis Update site is organized to give them the information, DESE guidance, and whatever's most current as far as what we've presented to school committee, et cetera. And they can also access the digital and remote learning under the technology section. So just a plug to let them know there's a lot of information out there and it's organized for them, hopefully in a way that's easy to get to. All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I just have a quick question, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible to post the FAQs that come in from each week that we get on that? So that families can go there to see what questions we've gotten?
So we do have an FAQs
Okay.
that was updated in September. We've been adding, I think Joan's been pretty much heading up the FAQ section, so any questions that we have updated, that's where they would be. That's all part of this whole Millis Updates website too.
Okay, so even the questions that have come in like last meeting, are those getting posted here too?
I'm not sure, are they getting updated that quickly? Nancy, do you know?
Last meetings have not, but we
Okay.
can add those.
Okay, just so that there's like a one-stop shop. for everything.
That's what we were aiming for,
Yeah.
so
No,
yes.
I like it.
Right, anything else? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Jen.
Okay, any other questions for any of the principals? So we can let them scoot. We're good? Okay, thank you all. Budget update, Nancy?
Should that be?
Sure.
And then as long as Terry's coming up, I see a question about lunch procedures. So Terry, can you briefly explain what you explained to the committee about the lunch, serving lunches?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let's see, where am I starting? Budget.
Lunch, start with lunch.
Start with
We-
lunch.
we've been
Okay, let me
talking
start with
about-
lunch. So, for lunch at both schools, what will happen is we have a new method where we will be creating meals that will be served to the students. So everything will be pre-wrapped. It will be a set menu. It will be a rotating menu that we will try to choose the things that are the most popular with the students in that particular school, but they will not have the option of picking things as they've had in the past, particularly at the middle high school. At the elementary school, they will be served in their classrooms. At the middle high school, we have set up the cafeteria using desks with 6-foot distancing. And we have a orchestration where there is a single lane in, goes through, child picks up their meal, comes out, and then there's basically each desk would have a code. and the child scans that code, and that helps us if we have to come back and find out, if a child sat in a certain place for contact tracing. So that is one option here at the middle high school. We do have a secondary option. If we decide that we are not prepared to use the cafeteria seating, or if we're not prepared to use the cafeteria seating for everyone, okay, because we can only seat 60 in this scenario, we do have a plan to serve students in the classroom. And we have ordered, and for both schools, we've ordered additional materials so that we can deliver food to the classrooms and then pick up the materials when they're done. Are there any other questions about that?
Madam Chair, at the last meeting, it was either the last meeting or the meeting before, we had talked about getting clarification from our legal counsel
Yes.
about capacities. Have we received anything back?
We have not. I have a to-do for myself to follow up with him, but as of today, we have not gotten an
Okay.
update on that. So that's why there's still two options on the table. We're just looking for that legal clarification, and then we can finalize which model will work.
Yeah. One of the reasons we did create the model of the cafeteria is because we do know there are other districts that are using it. However, I do agree that probably clarification with our legal counsel makes sense. No, go ahead. No, I was moving on, so.
Oh, okay, I was just wondering, what happens if a child doesn't have a smartphone to do the QR code? How do they sign into their?
We have an alternative way for them, and Bob probably can explain it better than I, but we have an alternative way to track them.
Okay, just make sure.
Any other questions on lunch? Okay, budgets.
Budget. I think the quick budget update is based on various revenues, both state and mostly local revenues. And in fact, I just saw the warrant come out this afternoon. The town will be proposing to add to the school budget a little over $173,000. That's good news for the school budget. However, I would not advise the committee to rush to spend it immediately. There are still things that are out there. And I do hope that possibly as early as your next meeting, I can give you a financial report. The budget is finally posted in Munis, so there's still some reporting nuances that we're working out, but hopefully I can give you a report. But at any rate, obviously, we all remember that some of our revolving funds were under stress last year. The potential, particularly for transportation and food service, to exhibit some stress this year remains a potential issue. There are also some things we are funding with grants, and those grants will take care of that through December 31st. But at the moment, there's no grant funds to go beyond that for some issues. Some issues will be completed. So those would not, of course, be an issue. But, so there are some staffing issues that we may have to deal with some of those funds. But again, I'm going to try to give you a report that not only looks at the operating fund, which we now call Fund 3, you're used to having it called Fund 10, but also our two biggest significant grants, the CARES grant on the town side, which is funding some things, again, through December 31st, and also the CVRF grant, which people, I think of more commonly as the $255 per student grant. And so hopefully we'll get a report to you next week on where those stand as far as funding different items.
Okay.
Okay?
Any questions on budgets?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Conway?
Terry, you may or may not know the answer, and this may be something that's, we'll find out as we get closer to town meeting, but it looks like in the document you showed, they're projecting revenue to be $457,000 higher than what we anticipated in the budget.
Correct.
But it looks like this proposal at least only puts 257 of that back into the operating budgets across.
That is also correct.
Well, do you know the rationale for the proposal of not putting all 457 back in?
I don't have it in front of me, but isn't some of that money marijuana money?
There is, Yes,
Okay.
70,000 of it.
Right, and at least for the marijuana money, that is a sort of a separate pot.
Okay.
Now,
Pun intended?
pun unintended, but it's okay. Sometimes those are the best. It is a separate area of funding. And I know that that is handled differently
Yep.
from general revenue. So that's an explanation for a piece of it.
Okay.
It's not an explanation for all of it, because that's only, as you point out, it's only
There's still
$70,000.
$150,000 delta. That
Right,
explains
exactly.
70 out of the 220, so there's still 150.
So I would have to go back, and I apologize, you did not bring it with me
No,
tonight. I'd have to go back and look at that form to figure out
'Cause all-
what that difference is.
Because all of the rest, and on here, there's nothing that explains where that unallocated money goes, but the revenue sources here are all, with the exception of the marijuana 3% local options tax, it's all recurring revenue that would normally flow to the operating budgets in their entirety.
Yeah, the only one that I can easily explain would be the $70,000 of marijuana funds, because that is defined
Yep.
by law as a separate
Yeah.
group of funding that it's allocated in very specific ways.
Well, the good news is we have a tri-board meeting tomorrow night. Maybe we can bring this up tomorrow at the tri-board, night 3 of meetings.
That is probably a good idea.
Seems like the appropriate place.
Yep, it would be. Because I'm sure that the town finance director will be raising it, and of course, the finance committee will be there.
Will you have any new puns for tomorrow?
No, I think that's my one for the year, I hope.
It was a good one.
Any other questions for Terry?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry. We'll move on to the chairman's report. Mark, do you want to give an update on the superintendent search?
Yes, so we've completed most of the site visits. The last element of the site visits will be the candidate Scott Holcomb from North Attleboro will be virtually visiting the staff and administration tomorrow afternoon. And then Thursday evening, I went out on a listserv that all 3 candidates will be doing a community forum. The length of that is going to be from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. with each candidate available for roughly an hour of that. The order of it will be Bob Mulaney will be from 6 to 7, Maureen Cohen from 7 to 8, and Scott Holcomb from 8 to 9. What we asked in the listserv is that you can send. We're asking the public to send questions in advance to actually to my school address, so mconroy@millisschools.org, so that we can facilitate the questions through a Zoom presentation where the candidates will then be presented with the community questions after giving an initial presentation from themselves to manage time and also duplication of questions. We're not going to take questions live online that night, which is why we're asking everybody to send them in advance. And if they're sent in advance, we'll make sure that they get addressed, and each candidate will be asked all of the same questions. And then we are in the process of scheduling our final interviews with each of the candidates, and then we will have our deliberation.
So just for timing's sake, we're shooting for next Tuesday?
Yeah, we're shooting for next Tuesday to deliberate.
Okay, and
As
that will
long as
be
we can-
during the school committee meeting?
Yep.
So we'll deliberate publicly during the meeting and then choose the new superintendent?
Correct.
Okay. We have a big week next week. Okay, so we'll go to updates on the school reopening plan. So I'm just going to pull up on my computer just the spreadsheet that we've been working off of, and we'll just go through these items anything that's left open. So the first one is the mask guidance. So the question still, Nancy, was the mask protocol corrected? Did we get that corrected? Where it wasn't quite lined up to the mask policy?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Superintendent made an update and had just asked, so took the language from the
Oh, yeah,
policy
sorry. It does
and
say
put it
it's
into the guidance.
My
So
bad.
that should be all set.
It is.
Um,
Okay,
Sorry, while you're doing that, can I just ask a question?
absolutely.
Do we have all of the policies published on, and I apologize, I didn't ask Jen Starr when she was up there. Do we have all of the protocols and the policies published for the public up on that Millis Updates website?
It's on, the best policies on our policies website.
But we could have it in two places. I think it should be in both places.
So I
Just
guess
like
what I would
COVID
ask
policies.
is if we could have all things COVID, hybrid learning, remote learning related on that Millis Update site so that parents have a one-stop shop for resources. So mask policy, any of the other things that we've talked about that might be on the list that parents might have
Even if they live
interest
somewhere
in.
else, there could be a link. So it's all one place on the
Yeah.
landing page.
Yeah, yeah. Because we're getting some questions in as to like, what's this policy, what's that policy? So if we could direct people to a single page where they could have a policies page where they could go and look and see what all of those would entail.
Like the health resources, that like COVID, what the procedures are if someone is, I know that you've sent all these things out, but if they could just be on that page again, you know, because again, people are asking where some of these things are. Buried in the email is everyone's answer, right? Buried in your email.
Okay, so the next one on here is metrics. So metrics for moving between learning models. So this is specifically on the health metrics. So Steve and I had a call yesterday with the Health and Safety Committee. Again, walked through the document. And it was, again, the Health and Safety Committee is comprised of Steve, myself, Nancy, Terry, and then both school nurses and 2 teacher representatives. Everyone was in agreement with those protocols, or I shouldn't say protocols, they're more guidelines, because they're really meant to spark a conversation. So if we meet one of the 3 metrics that are listed on this document, it sparks a conversation between the school committee, the health and safety committee, and the Board of Health as to, do we stay in the current model or do we move to, if we're in hybrid, do we move back to remote? Or even if we're in hybrid, is it time, it has something dramatically changed that we can move to full in person. So they're really meant to spark a conversation, not to be an automatic. So everyone was in agreement, Steve, if I'm speaking correctly. So I think we've cleaned up that document so we can add that document to this landing page that we're creating with all of this.
Madam Chair,
So, Mr.
I
Cava.
think we are right there for that. I think that also, part 2, and I don't think it hinders the ability to move forward, would be not school choices or whole school choices or the whole district, but individual incidents. So some protocols and establishing clear lines of communication for protocols around sports or another club or something that impacts a smaller crew, because really those are kind of more higher level, either a building or the whole district. So
Correct.
I think building, and I think it's the same people, I think it's the same idea, but I think we need to clearly articulate what protocols. So I think that's, once again, I think we are complete. I think that's the next, phase 2 of that is to start outlining that.
Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
can I just ask that next week, we don't have to do it tonight, but next week I don't think we've publicly shared that yet, obviously, because we've just been working
Yes.
through it, so we'll just have it so
Yes.
we can put it through next week. share what the three things are and how we're gonna.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We can do that. We'll put it on the agenda. Okay, so next one. It is a learning plan for students opting to stay full remote when a hybrid starts. So this is actually, then we added on to it to say, what does hybrid look like? And our ask was, can principals bring examples from each building of the technology options to support remote and hybrid environment and to support the hybrid learning? That is something that we just saw during our walkthrough and we will be making public. So is there any further discussion on this topic from the committee? We're good? Okay. Completed. Building traffic readiness, so space markers in buildings, traffic patterns outlined and complete in the building. This was to be completed today. Again, we had our walkthrough prior. That will be made public, but I can say with every confidence that it is fully marked and we are in compliance. Unless I'm going to open it up to the committee to see if there's any other discussion on this one.
Looks good.
Good? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, staffing plan. Nancy, do we have an update?
Yes. We made a little bit of progress. We're still searching for the learning facilitators. We do have somebody who's interested in helping the hall and bathroom and lunch monitor at Clyde Brown. But we still are in need of 2 learning facilitators at Clyde Brown with one Tears, which is a part-time specialized person, a Tears reading person. At the middle school, we have hired a wonderful paraprofessional, so we have all the paraprofessionals throughout the district that we need, but we need one more learning facilitator at the middle school ideally, and at the high school we still need 2 learning facilitators. So we still have about six positions open, some of them full-time and 1 part-time.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Conroy.
Question on staffing. So, Nancy, I don't know when it was, a while ago, there was at one point a certain number of teachers and staff who had requested accommodations that ranged from simply just plexiglass on a desk to, and on the other end, those who needed to work remotely due to medical reasons.
Right.
How do we have individuals who when we go remote would still need to be to remain teaching from home? And if so, do we have the staff to backfill the room or their classroom with a teaching facilitator, et cetera?
Yes.
Hybrid.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
We
yeah.
do have a few teachers who must remain remote and teach remotely due to medical accommodations, and yes, principals have coverage plans for those classrooms. It would be wonderful if we could hire the 5 more learning facilitators, because that would be helpful, but they have a contingency plan for if we have no interest in that. I think, we've posted, we've sent it out on the listservs, we've advertised on various sites. We continue to do that, and hopefully we've been very pleased with the quality of our hires. We just need the public to know that we still have five positions and a part-time position. So the principals do have contingency plans for coverage of those classrooms.
Maybe we should send it out again.
I will,
Yeah, just because maybe somebody was thinking about it the first time and didn't do it and sees it again.
I also asked that, for next week, if we could just get understanding from the principals of what that contingency plan is specifically. So is it, basically, what is it? Is it teachers swapping prep, how are they covering it if we don't have the additional staff that we were ideally going to have? Is the addition, or the people that we don't have merely, like, we have all the rooms covered based on how many we've been able to hire thus far, we just wanted more, or no, we're actually short 1 or 2 or 3, and this is specifically, without names, specifically how we're going to cover those.
Anything else on staffing? Okay. Daily attestation. Nancy, do you want to give us an update on? I know you and Terry have been working, or Terry?
In the packet, we've included the screening procedure that we've developed, that Sue Ann, or Dr. Marks and the nurses have worked on. And then we've participated in some, vendor presentations for some of the apps. But then beyond that, Terry has had several conversations with the vendors.
We've been vetting vendors. The one you originally saw and additional vendors, and we're down, I think, basically to 2. And when I say we, that's included the nurses, the school nurses, and the director of student services. And basically part of it is lots of folks do this from different vantage points. Some are a safety standpoint, such as Safety App. Some are from a student management standpoint, such as another company that we use for eSped called Frontline. Some do it from a totally different student registration standpoint. So part of it is finding out, who's kind of doing this and doing it the right way. So we're basically down to 2 vendors, both of whom are being used in Massachusetts, both of whom, one of whom we have seen a presentation on. The other, frankly, while the meeting was going on, I was talking with their rep about setting up a presentation, and that's the one you've seen before, Safety App. But basically, these are the 2 that can do the cohort screening the way we want to do it, that can do our staff screening, that can do the alerts, that can do all the different types of things that we want to do. We just want to make sure that they can cover every single detail we want to cover, that we can do this right and correctly for the safety of obviously our students, our staff, and obviously the community. We expect to be able to make a decision and pull the trigger on this probably by tomorrow's the middle of the week, I guess. So I'll say the early end of this week, Thursday or Friday, that we'll be able to pull the trigger on which one we're going to select.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kellogg.
you have something up and running for 10/19.
Yes.
Actually, for 10/18, the Sunday before.
Both
potentially we're in.
of these vendors have indicated they can do that.
Are you also working on an alternative, so in case the vendors can't produce, that there is a attestation done that Monday or that Sunday night in lieu of the app not being up and running?
We do have an alternative.
I would say it has to be with core, because you're gonna have to get parents to sign up and log in and learn how to use it, too.
So what the point I'm trying to make, going forward, we're not having the vote tonight, but we're
Right.
going to take a vote next week. We need to have this up and running. It's not, we're in negotiations, we're in conversations. We should already be doing this with the staff on a form now, but let's just at least acknowledge the 19th. We need to be up and running, whether it's an app or whether it's paper.
That's why we want to make a decision this week. And I guess, so let me ask a question of clarification. My understanding is committee already had indicated they wanted me to pull the trigger on this. Am I incorrect?
No, you're not.
No.
Okay.
You're correct. You're.
Yeah.
Because that's my plan. My
Do you
plan.
need,
Yeah.
didn't
Do
we
we
do
need
a
to
vote?
Do we
Yep.
need to vote?
I think we did.
No, we did,
We voted up to $8,000, right?
up to 8 grand. Is
Is
that
that
enough money?
enough?
Because we can rescind that and do a new one.
Right.
One of these would be just under 10 grand.
Madam
So-
Chair,
Mr. Catalano?
I make a motion to approve the business manager to expend up to $15,000.
Don't need that, but that's
Well,
okay.
That's what you're getting. Up to $15,000 to purchase and procure an app for daily attestation.
Second,
Okay.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I'm trying to recall if the information that's been shared with the public, both from our meetings and from any documentation, outlines for the public what we will be requiring of students as well as staff members.
It doesn't.
Okay. I think that might be a consideration for folks, for some families, on whether they choose to send their child to school or not. So, or is it fair for me to say that we are in agreement that a daily attestation is going to be okay, not daily, that an attestation one time per week for each cohort that is choosing hybrid will be required. And what that attestation will include will be health check questions, similar to, do you have a fever of 100 or more? Are you coughing? Have you had exposure? Have you traveled outside of Massachusetts to the waived states? So what we're doing is we're asking parents
Right.
and we're asking staff members as they come into the building, prior to entering the building, to
Yes.
fill out an application that, let's say it's somewhere between 10 and 15 questions, that should take less than a minute's time. You can
Correct.
call it 3 minutes. I happen to do one every day in my household, so let's just not
I would
take you more
concur it
than
takes
3
less than,
minutes total.
it should take less than a minute, I
But
would
just so the
believe.
public is clear
Yeah.
on what we're talking about, in case there was any confusion.
That's right.
This will be a requirement for sending your child to school in the building. It is also a requirement for staff coming into the building as well.
If
Correct.
you don't do it, you will not gain entry into the building, right?
Yes. Correct.
Let's finish the vote, because then the procedures and some of the protocols,
Yeah.
we need to get the app, and then we have some time to work out some of the nuances of, but yes, the idea is not to get into the building.
Oh, we had to move in second, right? Sorry. I'm like, why is everyone looking at me? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I
Catalano?
make a motion to rescind the previous, I think it was last week, the previous motion of,
Jody, he doesn't have to do that?
So.
for the 8,000.
The minutes that I have in here for today, for 9/29, and I have contact tracing app possible action. I don't believe.
I don't think we ever did take a
Yeah,
vote.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm-
We didn't vote last.
I'm not sure
We
you
told you to
did,
go out and do research, and we would
Yeah.
take it
Yeah.
this week.
and.
So we don't
and-
have to rescind it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think you didn't is because at the time, some of the things we were looking at were under $5,000. And I think that was part of the reason we didn't at the
So you have
time.
what you need, and we don't
I have
to
what I
rescind
need.
it.
Just got the one motion you made tonight.
Okay,
Okay.
Thanks, Jody.
thank you, Terry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I do want to go back because I skipped the airflow study findings, and we have that it's been completed, but there was some work that needed to be done. I know that you'd mentioned that most of the work was, but can we just get an update on where we are with
To the
that?
best of my knowledge, all of the classroom unit ventilators are operating as they should, except for the one that we had to order the guts for the exhaust. That is on order, so we are waiting for that part, that motor, basically. Rooftop units, I think all of those are in operating order, except for one, and again, waiting on a part.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. On Friday, we were supposed to have the part, and if installed, the exhaust unit in the quarantine room. I honestly haven't checked on it. Yes, no? It was installed, so I think that's where we are.
Okay, thank you.
We're in pretty good shape.
Lunch protocol is next. I think we talked about that. It does still say it's open for middle school, high school. I'm going to leave it open just until we get the confirmation from legal on which way we can go. Not saying that the protocols aren't done.
Okay,
You guys
okay.
have done those. We just don't know which
Because
one.
Mr. Fallon did create the Plan B, if you will.
Yep.
The in-classroom, and I know that was one of the questions that was also raised by the committee.
So,
Perfect.
one thing, there's been several questions. I know we were going to wait on the questions, but I think this one would be easy. There are several questions. I think people are under the assumption that they cannot bring their own lunch in.
They can.
They can. So
They can.
for people out in the audience, you are allowed to bring in your own
We-
lunch. There was like 2 or 3.
We would, same with water container,
Reusable.
water bottles,
Refillable.
refillable water bottles. We would ask that they be clearly labeled, the containers be clearly labeled, however. That's our only real request, to make sure we know whose is whose. Okay?
That makes sense.
I also saw in that question, would they have access to a microwave? I don't think so.
No.
We don't do that now. So it's not something we're probably gonna add.
There was a question about allergies.
Oh, yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. If we know that there's an allergy in a school, we don't serve. So the peanut allergy was, I think, what was raised, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we would not serve something with peanuts or, gluten's a little different, but that is a preparation issue. So, in other words, if somebody had a gluten allergy, we would prepare the meal separately according to gluten-free standards, and that would be held separately for that student. Okay, but if there's an egg allergy or peanut allergy or whatever, then the school simply becomes, peanut-free or egg-free or whatever. And I think particularly, Clyde Brown has been experiencing that for a number of years, if I recall.
And Terry, in general, the questions on food service and allergies should go directly to Sean Callan.
Yes.
Our food service director, because he works closely with families around allergies.
Yes, it's,
And all the protocols for lunch have been very carefully vetted for
Mhm.
ensuring that students with allergies remain safe.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay.
I'm looking down at the rest of the list, and we have all completed after this. Did you just have a question? Oh, sorry.
No, I just said thank you, Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so really the only thing we have left to kind of work through is the daily attestation. Everything else seems to be in order. So thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Gibbons.
can I take the opportunity to just clarify one thing on the attestation? Just
Yes.
because we got a question and it should be a quick one. The attestation will be required once per week if you're a student coming into the building.
Yes.
You would do it one time. If you're coming in on Monday, Tuesday, you would do it Sunday night. If you're coming in on Thursday, Friday, you would do it Wednesday night.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to further clarify from that, the intent for this is the school nurses will be monitoring the responses. So if you happen to, check something that's red, so if you're saying my student's not feeling well, you will get a follow-up call from the nurse, and they will talk you through the next steps on what to do. Same thing if we have a missing attestation, a missing response, you will be getting a phone call from the school nurse to double check and they could is simply just ask you the questions over the phone because sometimes things happen. But what I understand the way the app works, it's really hard to forget because you get multiple reminders. So it will be monitored by the school nurses, and if there is any question that that you mark something that turns red on, the nurses will give you a call.
Before we move on, Nancy, are there going to be any students that are potentially here in both cohorts? Monday, Tuesday, then Thursday, Friday. So there could be, for some families, it could be 2 attestations.
Correct.
If they're covering both cohorts.
Good point, great point.
The majority of students will be 1 time a week because of their 2 days, and then some will be twice a week for 2 cohorts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll go back to the agenda. I think the only other thing we have on here is the radon study results.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
can briefly update people. There was a radon mitigation system installed at Playground, and after that work was completed, our consultants deployed 65 short-term radon monitoring devices in 56 locations, and those were in place for at least 72 hours. The results indicated that for all of those, the levels of radon that came back were between 0.4 and 0.6, which is much lower than the average range of 2 to 4 PCIs. I forget what PCI stands for, but and well below the EPA action level. So the mitigation system seems to be doing what it was designed to do.
Perfect.
It's good to get an air quality study at an elementary school that's tested correctly.
We have any old business or new business? We do not have an executive session tonight, do we?
No, I didn't see anything.
No?
I don't believe
Okay.
I have a question. In order for families to plan, is it the intent of the committee to vote tonight so as to whether we will be moving to hybrid or?
No, so I don't think we changed the plan, right? So we will, the vote will be next Tuesday with the intent that the first day of hybrid be the 19th. So I think, we just walked through all of that, and with our walkthrough today, we look like we're in really good shape with the really only open item is the daily attestation. Again, the schools look great. Our health metrics are holding steady, knock on wood. So next week is a big meeting. So we will not only be deliberating on the superintendent and making public and choosing the new superintendent. It will be, just going through, again, our open items, which is really just one. So as long as we can work through that daily attestation, whether we have the app or we have the acceptable workaround, Plan B, it looks like we're on track and to take that vote. And again, barring any big changes between now and then, it looks pretty probable that we will be moving to hybrid.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so we do have a meeting scheduled next Tuesday. And yeah, I think that's all we have for today, unless anyone else has any
Madam Chair,
parting words. Yes,
make a motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.